Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining our AI-powered search for Sitecore demo webinar session. I'll be your host. My name is Clara Boulanger, and I work on the marketing team here at Coveo, and I'm super excited to be a part of today's session. I'm also very thrilled to be joined by our speaker, Sean Pollock, who is a sales engineer here at Coveo. I have a couple of housekeeping items to cover quickly before we get started. First, everyone is in listen only mode. However, we do want to hear from you during today's presentation. We'll be answering questions at the end of this session, so please feel free to send those along using the Q&A section on your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded and you'll receive the presentation within 24 hours of the conclusion of the event. Finally, there will be a brief survey at the end of this session, so please help us improve future webinars by providing your feedback on the webinar content and experience. For those of you just joining us, welcome to our AI-powered search for Sitecore demo webinar session. Now let's get started. Sean, please take it away.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are. We're going to be going through a number of Sitecore-powered sites with Coveo today. These are live sites that you can go on with existing customers, and we'll get into the back end a little bit in terms of what we provide on the installation of Sitecore, as well as being able to manage all of your different sources and provide that relevant experience that you're looking for on your sites. So I'll just advance the slide here just to tell you a little bit about how we achieve that formula. For Sitecore and Coveo, it's not about just typing a phrase or a couple of words into a search box to be able to retrieve the content from that index. What we're looking for is relevance. And the way we provide that is first being able to have those easy connections to the content itself. Be it the content that you have within Sitecore or any other third-party systems, we want to be able to make sure we have a secure connection to those different sources so that we can add that into our unified index. The second being is having the context. Coveo is always trying to gain context in terms of the search for things like maybe whether you're a mobile user or a desktop user or possibly your location or the language that you speak. All of those contribute to Coveo gaining the intent of being able to gain what the search or what the intent of the search is. Now, with that, we add the machine learning and the analytics to be able to analyze the behavior of what other people in the past have searched for to gain some of those successful searches so that we can provide you with that relevance, being able to take that experience and provide a relevant result based on your search. And it's always about not just what you're searching for, but Coveo is always anticipating what you may need next. And that's something where we're driving when it comes to things like recommendations. Now, the unified index allows you to have all of these multiple touch points, be it mobile across websites or commerce, and we'll see a slice of some of those websites today. But these can also be inside communities or logged in communities, support portals, any contact centers, more authenticated user experiences, and we can also provide experience when it comes to CRM search or in internal intranets or even within your own applications. We can provide experience and gain some of the machine learning experience from there. Now, what we provide is unified content. So as I mentioned earlier, you can see on the bottom left how we have Sitecore and Lithium and Jira and even YouTube channels, 35 different types of connectors that all contribute into that unified index to provide us with search recommendations. We take the activities of the past past users and we're able to provide you with more intelligent search results. What we also combine, since we do reside right within your own Sitecore index, is to be able to use the profiles from your XDB. We take those into context as well. So as you've built out your journeys with XDB personas, we're able to also provide intelligent, relevant search results and recommendations based on those personas. So why Coveo for Sitecore? As I mentioned earlier, we are integrated with Sitecore. We're able to provide things like facet information. We provide content types that you can drag and drop onto the page, which allows you to easily configure things like the facets or the search results in the ways you want to filter them. They are very customizable, they are very configurable, and they are very reusable. So very, very easy to incorporate that into Sitecore. When it comes to things like the machine learning, this is something where as you experience or have trending behavior on your site, as an example, the machine learning can respond by boosting the relevance of certain content. The machine learning is something that's very important about a site because you may have reports that you can run on the site itself, but those are events that have already happened and you can't respond to them until you notice them in the reports. The machine learning is something where it's always tweaking and always tuning to provide that relevant information. These are things that you can also create multiple machine learning models so that you can test out different results using our A/B testing. Obviously, usage analytics is something that is very important. What user activity you're getting, being able to slice and dice and drill down into the data so that you can pick up on different global trends that are happening within specific regions or on specific pages. But it's not just about how people are using the site, it's also about what people are not getting out of the site. What are we seeing that where searches have failed, as an example? When they've come into the site and there's 0 results, what were those top queries? When they've come into the site and put in a search query, but they didn't click on anything, what were those top queries? So it gives you that ability to then move to the next step for that tuning and personalization. With Coveo, you have a number of query pipelines. We'll go into that a little bit later on how you can tweak the experience for each particular persona, but also be able to start to have control over the sources so that you may want to boost relevancy for a specific source or a specific piece of content. And as I mentioned earlier, another important thing when it comes to Coveo for Sitecore is that external connectivity. We do obviously have that ability to index all of the content that you have within Sitecore, and that is something that is done in real time. But it also allows you to connect to any other sources of structured data and even unstructured data to pull into that index so that you've got that unified look and feel on the Sitecore site itself so that your users may not even know that these are a part of a third-party repository. You're bringing them all in. So in terms of how Coveo delivers that personalization, and there's 2 ways that we can provide that with Sitecore. Obviously, one of them being with the XDB personas. So we've got 2 users here where you can see that this particular individual is clicking on a number of pages and a number of content items on the site. We're going through that click journey. And a second individual is coming into the site and clicking on a number of other parameters when it comes to these pages. Now this is for sports. And at this particular point, you can see that the Sitecore Experience DB has given the persona of Julie, who's a sportswoman, and Joe, who's the classy man. And what happens here is that each one of these individuals are going to perform the same search, which is shoes. At this point, the Coveo query pipeline is taking things in context, what the query was, whether something is in stock or not. The contextual clue is the experience database. So we've been able to read that particular persona, and as we go on to the next step, the search results going through the machine learning, you can see the experience on the top where Julie is given sports shoes, and on the bottom, Joe is given the dress shoes. So the same search, but two different results. And that's something very important when it comes to that relevancy, gaining the context of the search and providing relevance based on that context. The second piece is we're able to do this without the XDP personas, but in a different way. We still have those two users coming in and performing the different search. The difference being now that Coveo is able to take other contextual clues. In this case, we have location. Julie is located in California versus Joe is located in New York. We can build that so that we can take that context in and provide two different search results, again, based on that particular journey. Now, those are two different ways that we can personalize when it comes to XDB and without XDB. And again, we can also take a modification of the two to really drive very granular, very personalized experiences based on not only the click path, but also some of the persona journeys that you've already built within Sitecore. So I'll just bring up a couple of websites here, and feel free to investigate these a little bit later on, because these are customers that are currently live on the site. The first one being is Pet Supplies Plus. Now, Pet Supplies Plus, you may be familiar with as they are an online retailer in terms of being able to go in and search for product. So if I go in and search for dry dog food as an example, Coveo is going to be providing us with a number of search results here. Now, the reason I brought this up is that you can see, as I just scroll down, we've got a number of filters that we can provide. Now, these are out-of-the-box components that Coveo can provide within your Sitecore instance, where we can use these as faceted search. All we need to do is really just point that component to the metadata that you'd like, a specific field that you may be storing on your content. And as you can see, there's a lot of different content types that facets that we do have with this particular site, but there's a number of other things that are happening here. Now, Coveo is also providing the boosting and relevance for the specific dog food itself. So it's prioritizing things that are on sale, as an example. It's prioritizing things that are made in the USA. Now, we've also got a default store name, and what we can provide in terms of context here is to be able to add a store. Now, when we have that context and when we have that store, you can see I've got 570 results. And I'm just going to go in and search for a store and add onto that. So I'll say that I'm in Buffalo. And as we're searching for the store, I'll make that my store. And then we'll go back to my dry dog food. So now that I have the Buffalo store, the number has changed a little bit because it has taken that context in terms of what product is available within that store location. And it's also changed, you may have noticed, some of the priority of the search itself. Now, you'll notice that we do have these little hearts here. This is something where we can start to favorite content. We can also provide a login page here so that we can start to track things based on past purchases. And Pet Supplies Plus is also taking into consideration some of the favorites that we have. So as a logged in user, we can get more and more contextual information so that we're able to boost based on some of the favorites or purchases in the past. So that's some of Pet Supplies Plus. I'll move on to another site here so that we can take a look at another use case. In this particular case, it's Fasken, which is a legal firm. And again, this is all based on Sitecore. Everything that you're going to see is our Sitecore sites. Now, Fasken is a very good example of being able to shape a journey based on search. And you have a large number of practicing lawyers internally worldwide, and you may be looking for a particular type of practice. and not just on the practice type, but also on personnel. Now, Fasken really increased the engagement when it came to search when they went live here. Now, an example of one of their searches is if I do a search for investing. Now, you'll notice that the Coveo query suggestions are popping up, and they've got a lot of query suggestions that are popping up. I haven't even performed my search yet, but you can see that I've got a number of client work examples which have popped up. I've got the actual practice for investing. Now, you'll notice that I did type in the word investing, but the practice came up as investment. Coveo is also performing this language stemming on an automated basis to bring out those root words as well, so that we again are bringing in more and more relevant searches. And all of these suggested results are based on machine learning recommendations. When did somebody come in and do a search for the word investing? What content items did these people in the past, when they had a successful search, what were those content items? So you can see here that this is a result of the machine learning taking those and using those analytics to be able to provide more relevant content. So I'm just going to do a quick click on the word investing so we can get into the actual search results page. Now, this one as an example allows me to really refine the search based on client work or any online knowledge base that they may have. Using a people search, they've even got blog posts like the Fasken Institute as an example. But very, very granular in terms of being able to find the information that you're looking for. Another example that they have here is you may notice that there's some content within the search results where there's only images, some may not have images, and that's the reason being is that Coveo can also segment the look and feel based on the specific content type. So as an example here, my investment management page that you're seeing does have some images on it that we may want to include because we have result templates that we can attribute to each different source type. As an example, a PDF, you may not want to show an image, but your YouTube channel that you may be involved in bringing into the site itself, you can show a thumbnail of that particular video. So a lot of control, again, not just on how things are surfaced, but the look and feel of each particular content type itself. So I'll just go into our people search in this particular case, and something that's really important is how do you find people in a specific site? So you can see here, especially when you've got a global site, and this is also a good recommendation when it comes to things like internal intranets, as an example, trying to find specific individuals that fit into a certain vertical or a certain practice. In this particular case, we can separate and look for individuals based on office, based on their specific roles, what related practices they have, as an example. And if I click on a specific individual, it doesn't stop there. Coveo is also providing the search experience for these individuals. So as I scroll down and we look at Alex's profile, you can see what industries and practices they provide. Coveo is providing the latest achievements for this individual as well. It also provides a little secondary search box to be able to find all of this individual's client work. Scrolling down again, all of the knowledge base articles that this person has authored, any of the seminars that this person and events that this person is speaking of, and all of the news and publications. All of these are very dynamic when it comes to the engagement of all of these sites. So again, this leads to that search journey. And everything that we're doing, or the user is doing when they come to the Sitecore site is being recorded by the Coveo analytics, and we'll go through and talk about that a little bit later. The final site or the second final site that I'll bring up is Enbridge. And the reason I brought this up is it's a very good example in terms of using the framework, the JavaScript framework that we provide with Sitecore, of being able to provide a very unique experience when it comes to the search. Now, Enbridge itself is performing searches, and they're using context here when it comes to location. So I can set my location here. If I choose to change my search, if I change my search results to Alabama, as an example, we can see that the content has changed based on the location, but that also happens in terms of the search. If I do a search for pipeline, as an example, up on the top right, we will get a number of search results. And again, this is Coveo search results, but being displayed in a very visual way. As I do that, I can select this particular box. So I can have a global search or select this box to say, show me all of the results that are close to me. So again, making that very personalized and being able to make that content relevant. As I go in, Enbridge also has a very unique search in terms of an interactive map, which it's using Coveo for. So in terms of the search, I can again type in the word pipeline, and it will give us all of the different types of infrastructure. Again, these are Coveo facets. We can whittle down the results here, but then click on a particular pipeline itself and be able to find that information. So very unique when it comes to things like being able to take the JavaScript UI and provide these very custom look and feel when it comes to these particular sites. Now, the final component when it comes to Sitecore is obviously the XDB. And I'm going to bring up a sample site here, which is the Habitat site. Now, the Habitat site itself is actually a Coveo demo site. And you'll notice here that it gives me the ability to read the XDB persona. So you can see my on-site behavior here. What happens is we're going to change that persona, and we're going to be able to see the effect of that. Now, this particular site, I'm going to do a search for the word speakers. And a couple of things have happened. If I spell that incorrectly, you can see that it's highlighted in italics for the correct spelling. It's also given me a number of query suggestions. Again, Coveo is taking that information that other people are typing into the search box and providing facet suggestions. And the reason we're doing this is it starts to remove those mouse clicks when it comes to particular searches or that user experience. When I click on the word speaker, I get 60 results. You can see the 60 results here. And as I've done that, we get a certain order. Now, Coveo just didn't randomly put these orders up. It's based on what people have searched for in the past when it comes to speaker and which one got the most engagement. And that was this floor standing speaker here. Now, when I click on this speaker, Coveo is providing a number of other components which are recommendations. Now, these are also driven by analytics because it knows that as people may have clicked on this particular speaker, they've also clicked on other speakers as well. And that could have led to a successful event like something like a purchase or somebody adding it to their favorites as an example. There's a secondary search, which is happening on the right-hand side. Now, I did do a search for the word speaker, but these are now also posting related blog post articles, which may supplement the content which is on the page. And as I click on one of those blog post articles, you can see as I've done that, we now have that on-site behavior here. So the XDB persona has now kicked in on Sitecore, and you can see that it is giving me a classification of a home cinema persona as well as a target room category of theater. The difference being now is Coveo has that additional context. Now you've gone through and built the rules engine for your XDB personas within Sitecore, and as Coveo does reside right in your index or right in your instance, we have a lot of advantages there to be able to read that information. So the effect now is if I go back to my search page, you're going to see here that the order of the speakers has now changed. We still have the same 60 speaker results, and that first speaker is just farther down the page because it's not relevant for this particular persona. We're looking for home theater packages and home theater speakers, and you can see how that order has changed. Now, everything that you see here is using the out-of-the-box components of Coveo in terms of things like the facets and the query results, and being able to drag a facet onto the page. We'll be able to go into that now and have a look to see how that happens and some of the components that are actually installed. So I'm going to open up my control panel here in Sitecore, and you can see that Coveo Search does install right within your specific index. We can even go to the indexing manager, and as I just refresh my index here, you can see a list of all the different indexes, and Coveo installs alongside of the other indexes within your Sitecore index. The difference being here is that as we do have a copy of the web index and the master index, this synchronizes with the Coveo cloud. So another advantage of residing right within your Sitecore instance is that as soon as you publish new information or update it, that is immediately synchronized with the cloud, and it's something where you're able to immediately put that into a search without any additional effort. I'm just going to go to the right into the search page that we were looking at earlier. And I'll go down into the content tree in Sitecore and just pull up that Coveo search page so we can have a look. And as I go into the experience editor, you'll see a number of all of the Coveo components here. Now, all of these you can highlight. I'll just click on the Coveo facet. Again, very easy to drag onto the page. But I can go in and I can select a number of different options here. I've got my title, which is category, and I can point this to a specific field so I can see the computed categories. A lot of this allows you to do page level filtering. Now, the Coveo cloud allows you to shape the experience when it comes to the sources. But again, that granularity that you have here with Coveo and Sitecore is you can put a different search experience right down to the page and the content level. As an example, my search interface here, when it comes to the search results, I can put in an edit rule as an example, so that I can go in and say, I just want to see the commerce products within this particular space. I want to add or boost the score here for certain content. We can even add specific rules when it comes to personas down to this level as well. And when it comes to easily creating the content on the right-hand side using SXA, you can see on the right that we have excuse me, a lot of different content items that I can just, as an example, drag a Coveo facet onto the page and point it to the field, and it will immediately become sortable on the page results. So I'll just touch on that now. If you do have any other questions or any questions about that, you can type it into the chat window, and we'll answer those questions at the end of the call. Now, when it comes to managing Coveo, we do have things called the command center. Now, the advantage that you have with the command center here is that this gives you a view of the master index and the web index. This is still reading from your Sitecore index, but we don't have to have full admin rights to be able to monitor here. So I can actually go in and view the different fields from within Sitecore. I can see all of the different computed fields here. And all of these can be mapped to the Coveo index so that we can turn them into facets. But we would also do things like monitoring any credentials and any identities here, because obviously this is not something that you just need to use on unauthenticated web. We can manage identities and documents level security at the same time. Now, when it comes to things like the Relevance Tools, this allows us to go into monitoring some of the usage analytics, be able to view the machine learning itself, and to query or view some of the query pipelines. And I'll just pull that up right now. So at this particular point, we are now in the administrative console in the Coveo Cloud. And the really important part is in any website is how people are using their search. So this gives me a quick bird's eye view of how large the query count is. What is the click-through? What is the average click rank of a particular piece of content, meaning how high is it in the search results? The machine learning is always tweaking within Coveo to try to get the relevant clicks within the top 3 results. And as we're doing that, you can start to see what are those content gaps. This gives us a report here, if we click through, of the total number of queries that we have without results. What are the total number of queries where there's no clicks, as an example. And we can still drill that down through in terms of persona. We saw earlier, we saw the home theater personas here. So we can click into that persona and say, what are people searching for with that persona? What's their most engaged product, as an example. And the recommended content that we saw earlier, how engaging is the recommended content that the machine learning is doing? Are people clicking on it? What are the top recommendations that people are clicking on? So a lot of granularity there so that you can get a real slice in terms of those particular events. And for even things like bookmarks, how many did people add to cart? How many purchases or content did they click on when it comes to that? So a lot of really good statistics to see the behavior, but how those are attributed to certain events. And with Coveo, you can create your own dimensions so that you can see what turnover you'd like, whether, as an example, somebody coming in as a unauthenticated user but deciding to register for the site. We can turn that into a dimension that we can make quantifiable to add to your reports. So when it comes to those reports, how do we shape that experience? And the way we do that, obviously, is the machine learning will feed those models. Will do things like the automated relevance tuning, as we call it, and how we're able to take a number of queries and start to boost the results. The query suggestions are another big component where people are coming in and giving you a suggestion in terms of what people will click on in the future. And also those recommendation models, how many models or how many pieces of content people are clicking on. So we're going to be able to view those recommendations because it's what they went through in the entire journey of their session on the site. Now those models can also be tweaked. We can take the things like the query pipelines as an example and start to attribute things to it. This allows us to add query suggestions to the query pipelines. This also allows us a little bit of components where I can go in and start to have featured results. So we may have a component or say a new press release as an example, which would be our annual report. And in this case, if somebody types in the word annual report, I can direct them straight to that particular component. We can also take things and do relevant boosting when it comes to content, where I can go in and start to take an XDB persona as an example and say, I want to boost the category of theater if their XDB persona is home theater. So a lot of granularity so that you can start to shape the experience, not just with XDB, but also any other conditions that we would take from the context of that particular individual's session on the site. Finally, in terms of some of those sources, you can see here that I do have YouTube and Sitecore, but Coveo also has a number of 35 other different sources that you can quickly add out of the box to the index. And I'll just click on that now so you can see anywhere from Amazon to Box to Dropbox, sitemap crawlers, web crawlers, using things in terms of connecting into your CRM like Salesforce and Dynamics, and even something as simple as your YouTube channel. All of these are configured to automatically pull not just the content that you have, but also the metadata of things like security at the same time, and make it very easy for setup and decrease your time to market when it comes to quickly adding these sources. So in terms of all of the components, I think I've covered a lot of information here when it comes to these different sites, anywhere from product-based to content-based, and providing a journey when it comes to searching for people or articles, as an example, to very, very crisp user-driven UIs on Sitecore, but all still providing things like relevancy through that machine learning. We also covered how all of the different components that are installed in your Sitecore instance, so that it's very easy to start building pages. And in this particular case, we're also in the administrative console, so you can start to shape the different experiences all across those different channels. So at this particular point, I think I'll open it up to Clara to see if there's any questions on that came in through the chat window.
Hi, thank you, Sean. We do have a couple questions, so let me start with the first one. Are analytics available for all versions of Coveo for Sitecore?
Yes, so you'll be able to go in and you'll have this analytics report here. Now there are some out-of-the-box analytics, but you can also start to build your own. So they will be right there in the Coveo console.
Perfect. Thank you. Next question. If some content cannot be accessed by all users in Sitecore, should it be indexed by Coveo? And can Coveo integrate with user rights?
Yes, it can. So there's two indexes that Coveo at Sitecore is doing. One is the index of the content itself, and the second is the security metadata. So we're always making sure that the people who are accessing the content have the permission to access that content.
Sounds good. And what is the best approach, item crawling or web page crawling?
That's a good question. There's pluses to each. When it comes to web-based crawling, you may have documents that you want to include, so you can crawl the entire site versus a sitemap or just the page crawl where you're doing a general search of the page. So there are advantages to both. If you are heavier on the document side, I would do a general crawl rather than a sitemap crawl, as an example.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Another question that we have is, what is the best way to learn or train yourself in the tweaking and improving of search results? Ideally, something that can be done by authoring staff and not via a agency or third-party partner.
Right, and a couple of things on that. We do have We do have a great online training when it comes to our website and portal. So there are a lot of quick 2-minute plus videos to get you in to get the information that you want and be able to learn that. A second being is, while the function you'll be using are things like A/B testing, so that I can set up, as an example, 2 different pipelines. I can compare the 2 in terms of their engagement on the site, because you'd have the A/B testing analytics set up for that. Before you go live onto the site, you'll have all the information that you need in terms of which one is the most successful in giving that search experience that you'd like.
Thank you, Sean. We do have a couple of other questions. With Coveo, do we completely avoid utilizing Lucene or Solar within Sitecore?
No, we provide our own index. You may be using it for your other content or Sitecore functionality, so we just install our own index alongside of that. When it comes to the search, we are using the Coveo search. All of those components that you saw are pre-configured for your org with the Coveo Cloud, and so we would just go alongside it.
Okay, thank you. And another question, can you give estimates of how much time you should tell a client they should spend weekly or monthly managing their search and reviewing the analytics?
Another good question. So really, it's just an ongoing view of and a quick glance of what you'd like to see in the analytics. Obviously, this is something that you want to monitor when things start to go live. Really, you're just going to be watching the graphs to make sure that they're going in a certain direction. As an example, the query rank, that's something that you should start to see going down. So I would not, I mean, one or 2 hours a week would be plenty. And as things start to mature on the site, it can start to wane off there.
Thank you so much, Sean, for answering the questions. Unfortunately, sorry, that was all the time that we had for today. If we didn't get to your question, we'll make sure to follow up with an email very quickly in the next few days. So I think now will be time to wrap up. So just a couple of quick reminders before we sign off. We'll send the recording to all attendees within the next 24 hours. And please remember to help us improve future webinars by completing the brief survey at the end of the session. On behalf of Sean and the rest of the team, I'd like to thank you for attending our AI-powered search for Sitecore demo webinar session. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.